What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first installment of a new series on ProGuides, Silver Struggles. Now, this is your opportunity to become a part of ProGuides. We're going to be breaking down community matches to show players what they can do to improve their game. And what we want is your demos. Whether you're a silver or a global, there's always room to improve. So if you have a match where you just don't know what went wrong or want to find out how you could have clutched that 14-16 game, send us your demos. So let's get started. Our first demo comes from Steven. Steven is ranked at Master Guardian 1, so before we even dive in, let's measure our expectations. We're not anticipating Steven to be one-tapping everyone who crosses his path, but we can assume that he knows his way around a crosshair. We can expect that Steven has an understanding of intermediate elements, things like how to use grenades, spend his cash, and control his spray. Sure, they won't be perfect, but they'll be there. At Steven's level, we don't expect that things are going to be fine-tuned like micro-positioning, controlling the pace of the round, or outplaying the enemy in every duel. So, with that said, let's jump into Steven's game. The map is Inferno. Steven's team has won the pistol round, so we're off to a good start. So let's take a look at what he buys here in round 2. Okay, so here's a few things wrong with this. Firstly, there's $1,350 sitting in his pocket. You want to spend every penny when you've won the pistol round. Gearing up with better equipment, maximizing your chances of winning. You want to win the round, don't you? Secondly, he's only bought 2 flashbangs. You can carry 4 grenades, so if you can afford 4 grenades, then guess what? Buy 4 grenades. Just make sure that one of them isn't a decoy. Thirdly, he could afford a rifle, but he chose an UMP. Now, not everyone on your team will be able to afford a rifle in round 2, so if you're one of the few who can, then be sure to grab it. There's always a chance that the enemy will buy armor this round, so you need that extra damage and firepower. Moving into the round itself. Now, Steven is heading to mid. He flashes to cover his cross. Now, the flash itself could have been deeper so it pops closer to the T's, but the bigger problem we have is Steven's looking the wrong way. The idea is to blind the enemies, not yourself. If Steven had looked away as his flash popped, then turned back to mid, he'd have seen 2 enemies there. This would give his team a heads up that the T's were pushing this area. Instead, he heads around the balcony with 0 info on the CTs. The T's make a push through mid and take the fight with Steven's teammates. Now, this fight only lasts a few seconds, but a couple seconds is all it takes to lose a round in CS. Responding quickly to what is happening is crucial to success. Just take a look at our video on ENTs to see how fast the pros respond. While Steven was covering apartments, he was losing 2 of his teammates. There were so many missed opportunities for Steven to help his team here. He could have flashed his teammates on mid so they could peek safely, or pushed through apartments and gone for the flank, or even as little as shifting along the rail to the right so he could see into the boiler. Instead, he just held apartments and is now left alone on the site. He's forced to look 2 different directions and keep shifting his crosshair between short and apartments. Steven's team wins the round, but they lose 2 players against enemies with pistols. Taking down 2 geared up CTs is a huge win for the enemy. In round 5, we want to take a look at Steven's movement, micro-positioning, and pacing. Steven is on mid, and the T's go for a B push. He loses a teammate, and his A guys rotate across. But the bomb hasn't been spotted yet, so he's right to stay on A. Great job from Steven. He smoked off from mid, the bomb still hasn't been spotted, but Steven jumps to see over the smoke making a noise. Now, this isn't great. Any T holding here would have heard the noise and could spam through the smoke, and then he just walks through the fog blindly. Okay, so this in itself isn't terrible. His team could have called the number of footsteps on B to rotate over, but the problem is that he just walks through. He has 2 flashes. He could have easily spared 1 to turn this into a safe push. Steven heads to Banana to flank the enemies. Now, we want to slow down and take a look at his movement here. He's swinging around to get eyes on Banana. Strafing like this is great because it makes it really easy to stop your movement quickly, getting your weapon's accuracy right back. But Steven runs into trouble when he slides right into the wall. Now, this gives him no space to see more of Banana. If he spots an enemy who starts to retreat, then he can't chase them by pushing further to his left. Now he has to move forwards and left to cover the same ground. This takes more time and gives the enemy a chance to escape. So instead, he could strafe towards T ramp. This gives him straight line to move along and clear Banana safely, angle by angle. As Steven hits the wall, you can see he only goes forwards to get closer to the enemy. This forces his movements to be predictable, which makes him an easier target. Steven gets a couple of quick kills with his flank, and more importantly, he kills the bomb carrier. He has a proactive initial response, throw down a molly to stop the bomb from being picked up, but we can fine-tune this. Steven doesn't move from where he just killed 2 enemies. He's not pushing, he's not retreating, he's just kinda standing there. This lets the last T predict his position and pre-aim Steven for an easy op shot. So, how could Steven have played this? Well, it's a 3v1, over a minute left on the clock, and he has the last terrorist trapped. Steven can slow down. With 2 teammates on B, it's their job to push for the trade, not Steven's. Steven is just supposed to stop the enemy from leaving banana. He could even hold on to that molly and throw it once he sees the last T trying to escape banana. He's the last barrier between the enemy and the A side. He just needs to stay alive. Let's move on to round 8 and take a look at repositioning through utility. Steven is back on A with an AUG. He's holding from the pit position, watching apartments. He has a full belt of grenades, but no teammate nearby to support him. The first 2 Ts come barreling out of the doorway, one after another, and Steven swiftly puts them down. There are still no teammates to help Steven, but also no more enemies immediately pushing. Steven's instant reaction to this should be to use his grenades. This would create some space for him to reposition. By staying in the same spot and not using utility, you're counting on just your aim to win the fight for you. You're saying, I'm going to shoot them better than they shoot me, and this turret style of defense is never going to work 100% of the time. You give the enemy team too much space to use their own grenades, isolating you. They know where you are, but you don't know where they are. Steven gets another kill thanks to one of the T's blindly jumping through their own smoke for no reason, and showing us why Steven's push through the smoke on mid was actually very dangerous. But Steven doesn't budge. He's still alone on the site. He still has all his grenades. He still hasn't moved from one spot all round. So it's not surprising when one of the last T's pre-aims him for a quick headshot. Whenever an enemy push comes in, you should reposition if you have time to do so. Your grenades are there to help you make that time. Staying in the same spot gives too much power to the enemy and limits what you can do for the rest of the round. If you keep moving with each kill, it forces the enemy team to check every corner for where you may be lurking. We see this exact play repeated in round 10, holding from pit, full utility, alone on the site, and not a single grenade thrown from Steven. Except this time, his aim doesn't hold true and it's the first enemy that kills him instead of the 4th. So let's take a look at how Neptune from Ghost Gaming played those balcony and pit positions in their recent match against Renegades. Neptune starts the round by holding balcony. Ghost loses a nearby player, so Neptune makes a push through apartments to even the odds. He immediately finds an enemy and gets tagged down to just 4 HP. He tosses a molly so he can retreat and reposition. Clinging onto his last bit of health, he drops down to pit. This dramatic reposition throws off the enemy, who pre-fires a balcony position. Neptune now has the time he needs to land, reset his accuracy, and get the kill. He moves to broken wall but still needs more space to defend. To do this, he drops his smoke, making more cover for himself, and meanwhile, a second T pre-fires where Neptune was when he got the kill. Now it's a good thing he repositioned, because this free info for Neptune lets him anticipate the nearby enemy and line up for an easy takedown. Now with just 4 HP, it was Neptune's repositioning and grenade usage that saved him here, not his aim. The last round we're going to look at is round 24, where we're on the T side. The focus of this round is inaction, which has been a bit of a theme this game. 4 out of 5 of Steven's teammates are heading up banana to B. There are flashes and smokes getting thrown by all 4 teammates. It looks like real coordination, but the CTs return some flashes to delay Steven, but it's Steven's team who gets the opening kill. Then things start to go wrong. Steven once again just kind of hovers. He doesn't push with his teammates and never actually makes it onto the site this round. By the time Steven does spring into action, 30 seconds have passed since those first grenades were thrown. His teammate smokes have faded and the CTs have rotated across from the A side. Steven's team doesn't last long. This is a mistake a lot of lower ranked players will make. They see pro teams throwing all of these grenades and eventually winning the round, so new players learn those same grenades and think throwing them is what wins the round, but sadly, it's not. The grenades are just a tool to help you execute a strategy. It's still up to you and your team to deliver on the strategy through your own actions. In this case, you're never going to take control of the site if you're not actually pushing onto the site. So, we've seen a lot in this demo, but what are the big 3 areas we want to highlight for practice and improvement? First up, grenade usage. This was definitely a bigger problem on CT side than the T side. This often is the case. On CT side, it can be difficult to know when or how to use your grenades effectively because you don't know if you'll need them later on. But once you can see that the enemies are attacking, you want to use them as quickly as you safely can. This could be to slow down the enemy team with the smoke, deal damage in a choke point with the molly, or flash a teammate for a safe peek. Dying with grenades still on your belt is just a waste of cash. Next up, let's talk about repositioning. The general rule is that whenever you're spotted by an enemy or you kill an enemy, then you should change positions. On CT side, your major advantage is you know that the enemy can only come through one of a few routes. But if you're a T who's attacking, you have to check so many angles as you make your push. Staying in the same spot removes this major advantage from your CT side, so stay mobile and keep the enemy on their toes. Lastly, we have inaction. This can be a difficult one because knowing when and how to act only comes with experience. But we can say this: doing something is better than doing nothing. If you do nothing and you lose, you know that doing nothing doesn't work. But if you do something and it doesn't work, you can look at why it didn't. How did your action contribute to and shape the round? From there, you can try something else. And eventually you can build this library of plays in your head about what works and what doesn't. So that's all from us today, you guys. We want to thank Steven for being such a good sport and sharing his demo with us. Check out the description below to see how you can become a part of the next video by sending us your demos. My name is Andrew, and you can catch me on Twitch under the name Acebox.